I just think there's all kinds of possibilities in this.
Well, I'm just looking forward to the learning aspect of it. I've been, I was doing analysis for 14 years and I ended it. And at that point, I started doing active imagination, pretty much daily, and it's just been in the last like month or so, that I now have an inner figure who is as real as any of us here, who doesn't say much. And she always comes only when I'm just about ready to end it. Like I'll have a whole hour of nothing happening. And then my little bing bong goes off. I have to go to work. And they say, okay, this is your last chance. And then nothing happens. I say, okay, got one more chance. Then she comes and she is as vivid as any person, and she's got a sense of humor. And, she sends her little dog at me and has all kinds of little tricks. But, so the idea here is I really know, I mean, it just took that long to awaken this aspect of myself. But it took several years. And that's what Jeffrey Raff says, don't be, because you're really training yourself to to um, to dream while you're awake. And it's like learning to play the violin. It's not easy to do. Now I have done a lot of visioning and dialogue, which has been very productive or very fruitful. But what I was really trying to do was to activate the darkness when I have my eyes closed. And often you see little after images, and sometimes I'd see this little, sort of just a little circle of light, and there would be little shadow figures in there moving around. And sometimes, like one time I saw the faces of every woman who ever lived, and I'm going down a tunnel, and then there's the Great Mother at the end. And then I've also seen, this is actually saw it with my own eyes. It's not anything. It was vivid, but her her left eye is just like very like the sun. So I don't know. It's all that, but I am looking forward to it, Teresa. If you can just, I think Tim, you sent me her dissertation PDF and everything, and I'll just forward that on to everybody, and anybody who wants to participate, or I will be your 14th person if you.
No, I appreciate that, Craig. Thank you.
I think I can make the commitment, without any problems. I know I can, so it's no problem.
Well, that's great. I've got people all over the country that are, or all over the world. Actually, I have a woman in Slovenia, I'm sorry, and a woman in Devon, England, and another woman in Australia. But it would be nice to have a few men involved.
What I think is wonderful now is with this Zoom that, Marina is in the UK, Kevin, I believe, is in the Philippines, and I'm not sure, Santosh, where are you located? And then Kathy, I'm not sure where you're from either. So anyway, probably we're all from Omaha. I don't know. Okay, well, anyway, Jan has just come in, so now we can go on to the good things. But Teresa, we'll try to get your 15th volunteer here. Okay, all right. Well, okay, now we can begin. Thank you, Tim. I'm sorry I've been sitting here missing phone messages. I do that a lot, but anyway, we've only we're almost done with the third lecture of the Kundalini seminars, which Jung did because everyone was asking the details of Christiana Morgan's life and personal life, and what he was going to try to show them through the Kundalini yoga seminars, which was the difference between the stula aspect, which is the personal aspect, and the sukshma aspect, which is the non-personal aspect, through the 7 chakras. Now, you know, I usually, before I start a session, I always throw a I Ching hexagram. And I was going through lecture 4, you know, and I just amazed at the clarity that Jung brings to these images, which before were so dense. And you know, Jung said the difference between me and most people is what is opaque to them is transparent to me, you know. And so anyway, I threw this I Ching, and it was the tower, and it says the tower brings wisdom and clarity, you know. And I thought of the red tower, or the tower where Jung is dressed in his green garb. And this is such a mysterious image, you know. He sees a red flash deep in the forest, and it's coming closer and closer. And it's this man all dressed in red, and who, by the way, has Jung's face, and actually is Jung in the outer world. You know, I mean, it's this very discerning, cynical, caustic character. And, you know, he sees him ride up to the castle, and he blows his horn of Siegfried to announce it, and everybody rushes to bring him in. And Jung's up in his tower, and he says, geez, I hope he doesn't come up here, you know. And suddenly he hears these steps coming up the stairs, and then the door knocks. But anyway, that was what the I Ching said about this. And it was exactly what I was thinking before, is the clarity he brings to these images of the chakra. I'm hoping that I can bring that clarity. Hi, Angel. It's nice to see you. You know, I wanted to, before we get into it, we're just going to finish the animals of the chakra that are associated with it, and and then a few questions at the end of lecture 3, and then we'll go on to lecture 4, where Jung really describes the difference between he says that we can interpret these chakras either in personal terms or in non-personal terms. And he says, when we're trying to explain the universe, we always start out with the hydrogen atom and go up, you know, where in India, in the chakra system, you know, they begin by saying, in the beginning there was only Brahman, you know, and he said, I am Brahman. And by those words, the universe came into being, you know. That's where they start. Then they go down to the particular, you know, where we rarely get out of, if we're going to, he says, if we are wise, we always start with everyday events and the banal and the trivial and the practical and everything else. Not so in India. They always start from the highest level and then descend. So they start from Sahasraha and then go down. So that's what he's going to do here, but he's going to do it in a kind of practical terms. This is just a short thing from the 4th lecture. And then after we're done with the 4th lecture, we'll go back to the vision seminars. And the reason we went to the vision seminars from the Black Books, if you remember, was because the strength of the Black Books is they're so raw. You know, they're just one-off writing. It's not like the Red Book where he worked it over a little bit. It's just, he wrote that night, you know, and it just came right out of him. But the weakness of the Black Book, it's so raw. You know, what the Vision seminar really did was it gave Jung an opportunity to comment on the visionary process. And I actually think that the visions of Christiana Morgan are much more rich and deep than Jung's own visions. And then he also, I mean, Jung's are pretty deep, but so is any one of us. I mean, because they're not coming out of Jung, they're coming to Jung from the same voice that speaks to us. The only thing Jung could do, that Christiana Morgan couldn't do, was to interpret them. I mean, to her, they were just all gibberish, you know, and yet Jung helped her. You know, the book that Claire Douglas, who does the translation of the Vision seminars, also wrote a book about Christiana Morgan called Translate This Darkness, you know, and it's the biography of Christiana Morgan, who's an amazing person. She didn't die well, but that's neither here nor there. Well, anyway, I just wanted to start from the beginning and go down. I mean, at the top, this from Sahasrara, that's where the Hindus start. So we're going to do that here. And this is from the, he says, Jung says, we always begin. Now he's talking here about the personal aspect of the chakras, not the transpersonal. And that's what we need to get through our heads, is that this is not, there's two ways of looking at this. And that's why he says, our heads are in Anahata, but we live in Muladhara. You know, and he says, where in India, they live in Agya or in Vishuddha. That's where they live. But their personal life is in Muladhara. Where we, our psychic reality is in Muladhara, and our personal life is in Anahata, the heart chakra, which combines thought and feeling, by the way. The heart is surrounded by the lungs, by the air sacs, so it's surrounded by spirit. The heart is surrounded by spirit, and that's why it's represented by the gazelle, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So anyway, here Jung's, this is just a wonderful short little vignette of him going down through the chakras. He says, we begin in the head. We identify ourselves with our eyes and our ego awareness. And quite detached and objectively with them, we survey the world. And so we're in ajna or agya. But we can't linger here forever in the pure spheres of detached observation. He says, we must bring our thoughts to reality and voice them. You don't voice them in agya. You just observe detached and objectively. No words are spoken in the sixth chakra. They can be spoken in the fifth chakra, but not the sixth. It's sort of like, it's sort of like Svadhisthana. There's no words in Svadhisthana either. Everything is physiological signs. But in the sixth chakra, we just observe, and he says we identify with our eyes and our ego awareness. And so it's natural that we can just detached, objectively survey the world. But we can't linger here forever. We must bring our thoughts to reality, and we must voice them. And so trust them to this air and to the sounds, but with the words. So now we are clothing what we observed, our knowledge that we attained in the sixth chakra. We're clothing them with words. And now we are in the region of Vishuddha, or the throat center. But as soon as we say something out loud, and especially something that is difficult or causes either positive or negative feelings, our heart throbs. And Anahata seems to be activated. And then still another step further, someone disagrees with us, a dispute starts up. We become irritable and angry and get beside ourselves, and then we are in Manipura, you know. And so now if we go lower still, the situation becomes impossible. So we went from the third chakra down into the third chakra. When you get into the second chakra and the first chakra, you're in a pretty primitive situation. In the second chakra, he says, in England, everything below the diaphragm is taboo. You're not supposed to talk about it. But he says, but however delicate and painful a matter it is to speak of what happens in Svadhisthana, he says, emotions are no longer expressed in words, but in physiological processes. And so emotion does not leave the body anymore by the way of the mouth, but say by the bladder, he says. And so Svadhisthana is, but still is where psychic life may be said to begin. Because he says at this level, it was only when this level was activated that mankind learned the first rules of bodily decency. Okay. Now, before that, wasn't concerned whether it was dressed or undressed, wasn't concerned so much where it, I think it was Margaret Mead that says you can tell civilization by how far the dung trench is from the houses. You know, she said that's sort of a way of telling, so at this level, mankind, now we're talking about Svadhisthana, and I don't know how much we even talk about it. He dwelled on it a little bit longer than the other ones. I don't know why, but he says it's the beginning of moral consideration, and it consisted in attending to our needs in places suitable for them, and which also seems to be the education of small children too, is to teach them, to become potty trained or whatever. So he goes on with a lot of examples which are not that helpful, but he says it was also, though, as a level of expression, it's all done by signs. There's no words in Svadhisthana, and he gave a couple examples. What he called in primitive societies, when a thief would go loot something, he would always leave where he had looted a sign that he had been there, which was called grumus murda, a mound of excrement. And he said, "This is my signature. This belongs to me, and woe to him who crosses my path." In other words, don't follow me. And it's sort of an apoteic charm to stop anyone from searching him out. And he also mentioned one other thing, and it's not, just was interesting to me because I didn't realize it. When you would track, there were hostile tribes in your neighborhood, and you're out there tracking them, trying to find them. If you would find something fresh, that someone had been there and just had evacuated, it was very alarming because they were very near. So, I mean, that was actually, I don't know where he gets all these details, but it was pretty interesting. So the first speech of nature.
We say the same thing about bears here in Montana.
Yes, when you see a fresh scat, that's not good. That means they're very close by. So the first speech of nature. So anyway, we went from this detached identifying with our eyes and with our ego awareness. We survey the world, and then we suddenly say something about it. So now we've descended to Vishuddha. And when we say something about it, our heart throbs. So then we move Anahata. And then someone tells us we're wrong. And so we descend into Manipura. And then, I don't know, how did we get into, it doesn't really tell how we got into Svadhisthana. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. It's sort of similar to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if you've ever read that by Evans Wentz, where when you die, they say, hold to the light, and if you don't hold to the light, then you start going into the sixth chakra and down, so the idea was to exit, but you couldn't exit. So you go all the way down into Muladhara, and then you're reborn, as a something. So anyway, and he says, if you're lucky, you will be reborn as a prince. And if you're not, maybe you'll be reborn as a mouse or something. So anyway, that was just sort of a survey of that, and we'll cover that a little bit more next time in the fourth lecture, again, which is going to concentrate on really something that's been puzzling us through this whole thing, is how does this apply to practical life? Well, these are real experiences, and they actually happen to people, just like the hexagrams of the I Ching, and like the symbols in astrology. These are psychic experiences. No one could come up with these. You know, like Pythagoras could come up with, and I don't even know if Pythagoras came up with his theorem by himself. You know, but anyway, so we're at the we had discussed the animals of the 7 chakras, and the first one was the elephant, you know, which is the chakra of Muladhara, and that is represents the power of ego coming into. I mean, the fact that ego consciousness must come into being, and it's represented by the insurmountable power of the elephant. But it also, the elephant represents to some extent, and Jung is saying this is why we live, even though in modern Western 21st, what century are we in? 21st century world, we are, you know, still living in Muladhara. And the reason we're still living in Muladhara is because we have so many entanglements in the personal realms that you don't have if you're in the Sukshma aspect of Muladhara. In the Stula aspect of Muladhara, the elephant represents the heaviness of our personal entanglements, you know, that we can't get out of them. And that's why he says we live in Muladhara, because we are so attached and entangled in the personal, you know, and until you can detach from the personal, you can't enter the Sukshma aspect of transpersonal, because the Sukshma aspect does not occur in ego awareness. It occurs outside of ego awareness. We observe it outside of us, you know, and so now we're having a dialogue with something that is not ego anymore, you know, and that's how you create the symbol, the third thing. That's the only way that that we only can approach. Marie-Louise von Franz says we can never get in to the pleroma. We go to the middle plane, and that's where the philosopher's stone is. That's where the temple of wisdom on the rock bottom, as far as we drop down, where Inanna went to, where she had sloughed off all of her persona, goes down to the bottom. Now we can build the temple of wisdom, and there the inner world can come to meet us at this neutral place and create the third thing, you know. But anyway, the idea is that the elephant represents the entanglement of us with our personal, the personal realm, and the fact that we don't believe that reality is in the psyche. We believe the reality is in ego, you know, in our personal ego awareness and our personal life. Where the other realm, I was reading something that some inner figure told a woman in active imagination. She says, I need you, she said, to make the divine real in the outer world. And she said, you need me to make the human real. you're not real until you meet me. You know, I mean, you are a tree with leaves only on one side of the tree. If you want to become real, you need me to bring the leaves to the other side of the tree, you know. So anyway, I just thought I'd show, again, we just review these really quickly. This is Muladhara. It's represented by the elephant, you know, and also by the square. The square represents the earth, you know, it's the four-sided square, you know. And then the second chakra, which is Svadhisthana, and this is where we really start to separate ourselves from that world, is represented by now the water elephant, which is the Makara. What was our blessing in Muladhara is now the curse. If we want to enter into the psychic world, he said it was represented by the mother, who is your nurturer in early life. But when you try to leave her, especially if she's the old witch, you know, she tries to keep you. I mean, there's this paradox that she wants you to leave and doesn't want you to leave. And if you stay, then you're her prisoner in Spider Woman's house or something, you know, and you're not going to leave. And the Makara wants to devour you, just like the old witch or the devouring mother, like Kali. If you remember Eric Neumann's diagram, that is represented somewhat by the Makara, which was the nurturing mother in the center is now the devouring mother. Now, the third chakra is represented, the animal that represents it is the ram. And geez, I think I forgot that one. But anyway, what we learned about the ram that was really interesting is that he represents the sacrifice of the passions. You know, he's the sacrificial animal of the passions. So if we know that we are have to sacrifice our passions in order to advance, then we are aware of our passions and we've got distance from them, you know. And it's the small animal. It's not as scary as the elephant or the water elephant. It's just this: sacrifice your passions so that you can control them and then move into the next chakra, which is the one of Anahata, which is where we're going to start now. This is Anahata, and it's represented by the gazelle. And okay, the gazelle is an antelope, and not unlike the ram, lives upon the surface of the earth. But it's not a domesticated animal like the male sheep, nor is it a sacrificial animal. And it's not at all offensive like the elephant and the Makara. And it's shy and elusive and very fleet of foot. And it vanishes in no time. Now we're talking about the heart chakra too, because everything we're saying about the gazelle applies to the heart. It vanishes in no time. And when you come upon a herd of gazelles, you're amazed at the way they just disappear. They fly up into space with great leaps, graceful and tender. And they have exceedingly slender legs and feet. Now this is describing the heart here now. It's the least stirrings of air are sufficient to make them fly away like birds. They have a bird-like quality, and it's an animal of the earth, but has almost been liberated from gravity, and its force and efficiency is the lightness of psychical substance. And by the way, you know, the heart is surrounded by the lungs. So the heart chakra represents not only feeling, which the heart represents, but it also represents thought. So it's almost the combination of the two rational functions, or the conscious functions of thought and feeling, are combined in the mandala of Anahata. And we wouldn't think of that as the heart, but Jung is saying is because now we've left the material emotions, we've left the world of the generative organs and the digestive system, and so now we're expressing feelings and thoughts. He says things that you can't catch with the butterfly net anymore, you know. So it's become more abstract, you know, and they are in the heart chakra, and and they're represented by this elusive factor that's hardly to be caught. And I think the idea here too is that when it can experience the heart without emotions, without being possessed by it, because we sacrificed the ram, remember? So now we're experiencing the heart with some detachment. I mean, we are conscious of what happens, but to feel the heart and not be, and yet still be independent of the emotions that you have is a pretty high level. You know, you are living in the realm of feeling, yet I don't know exactly, maybe somebody here can express that better than me, you know, but you live in the world of heart, but you're not possessed by emotions. Now, this is often represented, Jung said, by that the feeling function has nothing to do with emotion. If you are a genius at the feeling function, like say Einstein was a genius at the thinking function, when you express yourself in your feelings, you're not emotional about it. You know, I mean, Joseph Campbell gave this example that you can go up to somebody and say, you know, I really don't like you that much, but there's no animosity. You're just being honest. You know, you can't lie because you're a genius of the feeling function. But anyway, the realization, it's a real discovery too, because you've sacrificed the emotions. You're not identifying with samsara anymore, the whirlwind. You know, you are now more in control of yourself, like a feeling function genius would be, or a thinking function genius would be. You know, you're in control. And so you've discovered a psychic factor that's somewhat independent of body. Yet the thing that Jung says about it is that it's always attached to an object. I love this person, I love that dog, or I love that scenery, or this the thoughts are always connected with a person, you know, like his books, Jung's books, everybody says, well, that's Jung, you know, so they identify it with the author or something. But he says there is a connection to objects in Anahata that you won't find in Vishuddha, you know, where the throat factor is what is what I always heard. And Joseph Campbell called it the level of purgation. You know, that's where we purge ourselves of attachment to objects, you know, and where in the heart we can't. We're in love. We're a lover. We're a, you know, we are one of the Minnesingers, or the the eyes are the scouts of the heart, and they go reconnoitering for an image that would please the heart, and it's just a different level. But it is the recognition of psyche itself as something that functions together with body and has the dignity of another cause. You know, it's not related exactly to the animal realms. So, Jung gives this idea of how elusive it is when he attacks a patient and says, tells him what something that he has discovered, and the patient says, "But that's just what I wanted to do." You know, it's so elusive. This guy's just the psyche or the heart was forcing him to do something or something, and it's elusive. That we are afraid to discover that this is not us. See, what happens in the heart and the images that come through what I think when Jung is talking about thoughts, he's talking about images of the unconscious, becoming aware they're not us, okay? They're not really feelings, but yet they are not us. So all these are non-ego realm things. And so Jung says the patient is afraid to discuss it. Otherwise, he thinks he has a screw loose in his head and he's nuts. And he's going to talk about, he talks also about that it's very difficult to go from Manipura to Anahata. And it involves the recognition that the psyche is a self-moving thing, it's genuine, and it's not ourselves. So when we've really moved into Anahata, we've moved into the realm of non-ego to some extent. Now, is that clear to me? Not really, but, you know, I'm going to go with that for a second. It means that the consciousness, which we call ourselves, is at an end. We discover we are, well, here's the discovery. The discovery is, and this we have this in every dream, we are not the masters in our own house, okay? That means we're living, I mean, how many people, it's just everybody I talk to, this is what their dream is. They're in a house, it's not living there, and they're not clear who owns the house. You know, the owner is absent. I've never met him. I don't remember ever seeing him. I think maybe I own it, but I can't find the deed, you know, or maybe I bought it or maybe I didn't buy it. I'm not sure, you know, but I'm here, you know. So the idea is that ego is living in a house it doesn't own. It's not the master, you know, goes and suddenly finds all these rooms and stories and cellars that it knew nothing about before, you know. So that's kind of the idea of discovering Anahata, is that we discover that we're not, and that we discover that there are spooks about that are playing havoc with your realities. It symbols the end of ego as king, because we've sacrificed the emotions, okay? We've entered a realm where we're not the master in our own house anymore. We realize that. We don't realize it, you haven't experienced Anahata, you know. So, you know, Jung says that people who can experience these centers it will never leave them. He says, once you learn that 2 and 2 equals 4, it will never equal 5. And he says it's kind of symbolized by when Wotan goes into this world, he has to sacrifice one eye. So he leaves one eye in the unconscious, the wells of a mirror, you know, and then he comes back. And it's also represented by there's this fairy tale where this writer is trying to leave the realm of this enchanted realm of a witch. But as he's just about to ride out, her wolves eat one leg of his horse, or bite off one leg of his horse. So he's left one leg of his horse, his ego, in the unconscious, you know. And he says, once it's there, it's never going to leave, you know. So if you really experience Anahata, you always are, have Anahata with you. And so anyway, if you've understood, it's the end of king ego. If you've understood rightly, as tantric yoga shows, the gazelle, the recognition of the psyche. What the gazelle signifies is the recognition of the self, of what the Indians call Purusha. So this is the first chakra where we behold Purusha, and Purusha is the self. He says we kind of see his feet from below, you know, is what Jung said, you know. And so now we're going to move to Vishuddha. How did we get there? You know, I think if you look, and this came up, I think, in a discussion with Marina last time, one of her comments, is that you just don't go from Anahata to Vishuddha. It's a spectrum. And Jung says it's sort of like a night sea journey. You enter a realm that seems like Anahata, and as you get closer and closer to it is Anahata. And then Anahata starts to disappear, and it seems like Vishuddha, you know. So it's not just these clear barriers. So, but we've entered Vishuddha, and who's in Vishuddha now? What animal's in Vishuddha? It's the elephant, but it's now the white elephant. You know, this elephant's not white, but Jung calls it the white elephant. You know, now this is the elephant of Vishuddha. Okay, this is the fifth chakra. You know, and why is there an elephant in Vishuddha? It's because after you have recognized in Anahata that you're not the master of your own house, and you leave the world, you purge the world of objects that you're related to, you have now you recognize that the real is psyche. The only reality is psyche here, okay? And that's represented by the white elephant. And it's extremely powerful, you know? And this is the animal of the fifth chakra. And the fact that it is the elephant means that the psyche is real. And this woman tells, you know, that the divine, you're to make the divine real in your world, and I make you real in this world, a human being. You're a human being until you've entered Vishuddha, you know, and recognize the psychic reality is the only reality. And, you know, Jung said at the end of his life, you know, people would come to him and ask him, oh, you met so-and-so, what was he like? And Jung says, you know, I can't even really remember. He said, you know, after all my children have grown up and my wife died and everything, he says, all those memories just are vague and vapors to me. He says, but what I experienced in my visions and my dreams has never been more real to me. And they keep gaining more realms. I mean, like somebody noticed that you know, Jung had this radiolarian dream when he was going to decide between science and science and I forget what, and liberal arts or something. I forget what it was. He chose science, but he mentioned this in like the 25 seminar, and suddenly the radiolarian was a little bigger than it was before. And then in Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, it's huge, you know. So the size of the radiolarian, which I think is a jellyfish, you know, it's just this. He goes into the woods, into the most secret place where no one ever goes, and here's a pool there, and in the pool is a jellyfish. You know, you've seen jellyfish in Australia or something, how beautiful they are. You know, what's that doing here? So peacefully, you know, this representative of almost a mandala of life, you know. And anyway, he just is saying The elephant represents that once you've, and okay, you don't have to go to Vishuddha. You don't have to experience Vishuddha. But if you do experience Vishuddha, you can't experience Vishuddha unless you realize that the psyche is the only reality. The reality that you experienced in your personal realm is illusion. You know, this is the reality. This is the reality of the universe. You know, this is the reality that was here before you were born, and it'll be here after you die. And it's that mystery. You know, Jung says one time about that birth and that life is an interlude between two great mysteries, like where did we come from and what happens after we die. He says, life is a short interlude between two great mysteries, which are in fact one, you know. So that kind of represents this elephant, this Vishuddha, that the psyche is the only reality, you know. So anyway, it's this, it is, as the power of the elephant in Muladhara led us into physical life, the elephant in Vishuddha leads us into universal reality, suprapersonal reality, you know. And now people experience this, you know, they actually did, you know, and they would go all the way up to Agya and Ajna, or whatever you want to call it, but they, people experience this. And what Jung says is what we're looking at really is the fourth dimension is looking at the psyche of nature. Just like, you can look at the 64 hexagrams or sort of an X-ray of destiny, the oracle. I don't know what it is representing, but it's there, it works, it's real, okay? And then the realms of going from Taurus, the bull, into Aries, the ram, and then Jesus being the last ram and the first fish. And then, you know, then we enter the world of the water bear. How did this come up? Well, it's the same thing with this X-ray of what psychic reality is. This is how, if you ever read about the seer of Provost, you know, Jung does a little bit on her. She had a similar system to this, you know, and the Tibetan Bardo, I don't know how much, if it came from India, but it has a similar system. And where do the seven heavens come from? Or the seven gates of hell? You know, there's this psychic realization of 7 levels to psychic reality. Okay, and it's just interesting, you know, that there seems to be that. So the power that led us into life is now leading us into psychic reality, and it supports the things that we used to think are most airy and most unreal and most volatile. Now the elephant makes a living reality out of that airiness and that volatility of those things. We must admit that these images that come to us are not us, and that they are disconnected from the earth entirely. And they are supported only by the psyche. These images that come to us are supported only by the psyche. And they're supported by the psyche's elephant, you know, this very powerful being. Like the ego was supported by the elephant in Muladhara, the psyche is supported by the elephant in Vishuddha, you know. And then we we have see, you know, there's this idea of that these images change tomorrow and they'll no longer here. They're very futile. They're like a breath of air that has no existence. But no, these images are supported, maintained, and sustained and pushed by the elephant. The elephant makes these products unconnected from physical realities, real. But it's a prejudice of the ego consciousness that these things are not realities. They are every bit as real as you. I would just say, I've experienced this in my own active imagination, that there's a force there that is not me and does everything it can to tell me it's not me, you know. But it's there, as real as any one of us here. And so the next level is well, just it's got a little bit more about Vishuddha. It's the not supported by any physical evidence. You know, there's nothing physical. It's all psyche. That's pretty much it. I mean, he's goes on and on about the. It's the center of the union with Shiva. You know, it's where ego and Shiva unite, and in wherein that Anahata is now in Vishuddha, psychic reality is still opposed to physical reality. It's represented by the elephant. So then when we go to the Ajna center, there is no animal there. So we now don't, we aren't supported by the elephant anymore because we are psyche in Ajna. In Ajna, we don't need to be supported by, we united with Shiva in Vishuddha. So we don't need any support in Agya or Ajna. So we are psyche. There's no distance between us and psyche anymore. The psyche is the only reality, and we don't have to find out what psyche wants because we and psyche act as one being, you know. So and it's represented by wings. They're not too easy to see, you know, but it's also sometimes called the third eye. You know, kind of looks like an eye, but those are also supposedly wings. You know. So here we recognize we are nothing but psyche there, and you can't even call it the self because we've kind of disappeared into it. Ego disappears completely, and so you know we've entered the realm of Tattvam Asi. You know, thou art that. You and this mystery are the same thing. You know. I'm gonna end here. Let's see. I don't really think there's too much to say. Yeah. Well, I mean, I told about the Wotan and all that. So I'll just leave it up for any comments about. Now, Gary, did you have anything today?
Yeah, unless Teresa has something she wants to present, that's fine. Otherwise, I've got kind of a different exercise.
Okay, well, sure. I think we Teresa, you're okay, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can just we'll send her materials on. I mean, she's wanting she's doing her dissertation for her probably your doctoral thesis or at Pacifico. Yeah, and she just wanted. I volunteered to be one of her participants. She needed 15. So if anybody else would like to volunteer, I'll send you forward on some stuff that Tim sent me, and you can get in touch with Teresa if you'd like to. But anyway, why don't we just open up to comments about anything, and then at 11, I'm going to just turn it over to you, Gary. I guess I'm hogging the time. Tim, do you have anything to comment?
Well, I'm just really stunned by this section. You know, it's been hard for me just to wrap my mind around the whole thing. I'm just plugging along bit by bit, and having read the material, you know, all of a sudden now it's beginning to make sense, and I want to go back and read all this stuff again.
Me too. I want to read it all again. Yeah.
But it's kind of like the process he's talking about, that you can't really understand it until you're capable of standing outside far enough so that you can look back at where you've been and reassess your experiences. And it's so helpful to just be able to have other people. When I had my mystical experience last year, I just felt like I was a crazy person because I can hardly tell anybody about it. You know, nobody understands what I'm talking about. It's very isolating. But then this makes me realize, okay, that's part of the reality of the psyche, that when you really get to that place, then it kind of opens up this whole landscape, and you begin to see, I can see why there is no physical analogy of what's going on. It's all psyche. And in fact, I'm trying to uncover something in my art that is totally non-physical. And so, you know, I'm using representational imagery to try to allure something out of the unconscious that I cannot symbolize. And so I just keep doing all these images that sort of put a stake around the outside of what I'm talking about. And the real feeling is in the inside where there's no images. So it's just fascinating stuff.
I hope too, the fourth lecture next time will add some clarity to it. But I'm like you, I just want to kind of start over again and go through it again. But the fourth lecture is where he compares the personal aspects of the chakras with the non-personal aspects. Marina, did you have any thing that you want to talk about? Anything at all? Not one thing?
Yeah, one thing. I really liked ego doesn't live in a house. Ego lives in a house it doesn't own. Mm-hmm. And that's where the self is. And it's kind of just like thinking about the ego self axis and that idea, and bringing that and constellating that, or crystallizing something that's really, really valuable to me and the work I do and the experiences I have. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, that was Jung's, actually, his first realization that separated him from Freud was, I'm not the master. And that was his first realization with the Red Book visions. I'm not the master in my own house. I mean, he's representing, I mean, I think it was in the dream where he goes down into the basement of the basement, and then he finds all these skeletons down there that weren't in his own house. So, you know, these from Roman ages. Kevin, do you have anything that you want to talk about anything?
Yeah, sure. I can, I don't know, because I've also been through analysis for a few years, which I don't do now. And there was quite a focus on individual development. And I think the more you can say develop and grow, I realize it's, at least for me, it's not so much about individual development. I see, for me, it's more that the self reincarnates, and it's the self that develops, not really the person. So we are just sort of an extension of something which cannot die, if that makes sense. And yeah, so I feel like the focus really, even the chakra system, is not so much about the individual development as the development of the self towards other things. And yeah, that's sort of my view.
You have to assimilate the personal, but until you've assimilated the personal and you got both feet on the ground, you can't separate from it to then, you know, develop the philosopher's stone.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I also realized I feel like also the self is brutal. Like it's brutal in its approach in many ways. Because at times, even at the expense of the ego, it will develop itself. Actually, you know, if you go to psychiatry world, you will see people full of destroyed egos. It's for its own self-development. And
yes.
So that's also one aspect of the self, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder is Jan still here? Jan, could you put the poem, The Hounds of Heaven, into the text? Because I think that kind of tells, you know, I fled it down the byways and down the years, and our ontological purpose is to biologically have a family, then at that point to become the vehicle, the empty vessel that is filled with psyche. And then, you know, we become a very strong ego. And then because we are such a strong ego, now we are, the ego is the divine or the self or the transpersonal, the non-ego. Yet, Jung always says, when I say God, you can say non-ego. The non-ego can incarnate in us. And that's really what alchemy is all about too. Jordi, did you have any comments?
Yes. First, to thank everyone, and Jen has put the links to Erdinger, the ego self-axis, and more to the point, to the religious function of dimension of individuation, which is about the same we are talking about in a different scale or in a different octave, the musicians might say. I have to confess that I have problems or difficulties on staying focused on that matter, because every word and every sentence or every combination of word sentences and paragraphs rings so many bells, and it's an invitation to many connections to other things in other levels, that to navigate that, it's quite demanding for me. Because Plato, the classics, the archetype of the king, the notion of virtue, plenty of things are triggered or are activated while dealing with that. I am sure I'm not alone here, and I may be senile or something, but it's too rich for my liver so often.
Well, yeah.
You have a dish that you know it's too powerful for your ability. That happens. It's very rich. I mean, all the chakras. When you mention, for instance, to sacrifice the passions.
Yeah.
That's for a 3-volume book.
Yes.
Thesis.
Yeah, on Manipura, you know,
To be precise here. I mean, this is it. I mean, I am more and more interested, as a matter of fact.
Well, at least he clarifies it somewhat from, if you had only heard about the chakra system, either from a book from India or a book someone had wrote about it from about the chakras. I think the one thing Jung provides is a psychological clarity. You know, he's trying to relate it to the human animal, you know, and not, he's trying to relate it just as beautifully as he does in alchemy, is trying to relate the alchemical obscurities to to the development that he discovered independently. Now remember, why did he quit writing the Red Book? Is because he met Richard Wilhelm, and he met, heard about Chinese alchemy, you know, and at that point he could, he knew that this was what he needed to drop everything and study alchemy. But anyway, there's this, go ahead, Jordy.
There is another thing. This is a relatively early Jung. So in terms of notions, ordering his vision, he evolved from that.
Yes.
And he used different terminology. That makes things even more interesting or more slightly difficult to me.
Yeah, I think one thing that we'll discover, though, in visions, now I would say both in visions and the living symbol, is all of these arcane concepts of his psychology are now going to be applied to an image that a real human being had, to real psychic material. See, what I think is so interesting to learn about Jung through the vision seminars is because everything is related to genuine unconscious material. So now we're going to, and all of this just came up out of somebody, you know, and so it's very beautiful. Now, Kath, go ahead, Jordy.
I don't know if you follow the chat. Dawn is asking, is the self the same as the ally, or are the two different?
Okay, well,
it's too simple the question to me.
Yeah, well, let's just put it this way. The ally that Jeffrey Raff talks about, and also Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan, you know, Jung does discuss this in Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, and it is the psychoid, okay? Now, the psychoid is not in the psyche, you know. It is an angel or something like it is an independent being outside of us. You know, we'll experience these characters in our psyche, but you know, Carlos Castaneda is experiencing, well, Jeffrey Raff. Okay, now you can believe Jeffrey Raff, or you can say he's crazy. But Sophia came and sat down on his bed, and his mattress went down when she sat down. Okay. And he experienced these psychoid figures way before he met Jung. This was the first time was in the shower when he was 20 years old, when he had just started college, you know. And so Jeffrey Raff is very unusual. And even though he writes these books about alchemical imagination, he eventually steers it over to the ally. And that was where, like, Gary and I got lost, because we don't have the capability of manifesting the ally in our lives, you know. So we're, you know, he mentions in the alchemical the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, or whatever his name is, that there's three kinds of people. There's one with wings that just can fly up to the upper realms. Well, that was Jeffrey Raff, you know. And then there's other ones that, like Christian Rosenkreutz, they would carry a ladder around with them. And then the third type, all they had was a rope. You know, what am I supposed to do with this rope? Well, you throw it up over that thing, and then you pull yourself hand over hand. Well, that's pretty much all of us. You know, we're hand over hand type people. And I'll tell you, I've been doing hand over hand for 4 years, and I'm still getting about, you know, a half a teaspoonful of what Jeffrey Raff got. So the self, let's just talk about this, Dawn. Within you, there is the self, and it's not the same self that's in me, because what the self in you or in all of us is, it is our root or rhizome. And see, the self in an acorn makes it an oak tree. And maybe it's an oak tree that is, you know, goes like this, and then another oak tree that goes like this. You know, I mean, there's, it's what needs to flower and what needs to develop in me, not in you or Joe or Larry. It's the one that is for me, and it was born just for me. We're not all born for the same purpose. I'm a INTJ, you know, and you are something else. So you know, I speak a different language than you do, you know, because my priorities seem crazy to my wife, you know, because she's a feeling function person. She thinks I'm nuts, you know, and so that's myself, my ordering archetype of wholeness that's in me. Now, there's also a self that is an objective self that seems to be, you know, at the center of the universe of the swirling galaxies. But that one is, forget about that one, you know. We just are, the only one that we can be concerned in is the ordering archetype of wholeness in us, you know. Is that the ally? No, the ally is, if you're really talking about an ally, it's a psychoid being that's outside of us, you know. Now, do Kathy or Angel, do you have any just comments about anything? And then I'm going to turn it over to Gary. You don't have to. I did get to Angel, by the way, has some, we never did get finished her dream about, she sees go everywhere. That's pretty cool, I think. I used to see 316 everywhere, but you know, on TV screens, on things, she sees the word go. Just this active principle, but we got to talk about that a little bit more. But anyway, Gary, I'm turning it over to you, and I'm just going to mute here. And thank you, Angel, Dawn, and Kathy, and Jan, especially for all the work you do. And okay.
Great. So I've got another Kundalini exercise for us today, and this is one I don't think you'll find this one anywhere else. I think it's of my own creation. But what I've been doing is, you know, a couple of weeks ago we played Tina Miller, and you know, and her Kundalini exercise. So I generally do that one first before I do this practice. So in general, you know, the more preparation that you do for this type of thing, you know, the deeper the feeling. But of course, what we want in this is, you know, what can we actually feel? You know, this is the part where we go for the felt sense. We switch over from being scholars to practitioners. And the other thing that I've been looking at is Chloe Goodman. She has this concept of how to reach our soul through singing. And if you think of like prose versus verse, when we switch over to verse, to writing poetry, it's like it brings another part of us out. You know, we change. Actually, I'm gonna go back to something that Craig quoted here. You know, indescribable feelings allow crossing to Anahata. And I think, you know, that's the type of trigger that we want. And one other quote: once you experience these things, it will never leave you. And you know, the practice of Kundalini is pretty new to me. I've only been doing this for a few months, but I've been pretty, you know, I've been really surprised at the, you know, the effects that it has. And the effects that it's had for me is that felt sense. You know, I can feel, you know, I can really feel the third eye activate, and I can feel this circulation of light. And if you remember Jung, you know, he was writing his black books, and then At one point, he stopped and he switched over to the study of alchemy. And the reason that he stopped and he switched was that he read The Secret of the Golden Flower and he realized, oh my gosh, this is it. And one of these times we're going to do a golden flower meditation. And, you know, and it's really unfortunate that Jung didn't, you know, that he decided that, you know, the West was just incapable of this. And maybe back in their time, you know, he was. But now you have, you know, many people that, you know, that look at the church as kind of, you know, it just doesn't have life. It doesn't have feeling. And they, you know, and they're taking up other practices which, you know, have life and feeling for them. So in this practice, you know, so there's this idea of chanting Om over and over again, you know, but what we're going to do is, and don't worry, everyone's going to be muted, and I'm going to have music to play with this. We're going to sing it, and we're going to vary, you know, the register that we're singing it in until we find what resonates. So Om can actually be split up into, is supposed to be split up into three things. It's supposed to be A, U, and M. And then there's actually a fourth, and the fourth is silence. And so when I'm playing this music, and you know, you'll have your videos off and you'll have yourself muted, what I want you to find is for the ah part, you should feel a resonance in your throat chakra. And for the oo part, that actually hits me two places. That I can get a resonance in my heart and also up around the third eye. And then for the M, and this one, you know, will probably be 10 minutes into it before you can really feel this. But with the M, it starts working its way down towards the root chakra. And a lot of times it just ends up more around, like, say, the solar plexus. But it's like trying to reach our chakras through verse. And that's kind of the concept. So what I'm going to do is just before, so it's A, U, and M, or you can just use Om. And, you know, find which one is best at creating the resonances and then go with that. So it's A, look for the throat, U, try to feel it in the heart, third eye, and M, that's where you drive it down. And then for the fourth beat, where you're not singing anything, and you're just going for what you should be. It's like meditation. In meditation, if you meditate and then hop up and just start doing things right away, you won't carry it forward as much as you could. You know, it won't be the sort of thing where if you sit with it and you just kind of remember, like, oh, this is the state I'm in, then your chances of being able to pull that back during other parts of the day and just enter into that state without having to go through the whole process again are higher. So for the fourth beat, what you're trying to do is feel the energies, because in Kundalini, the idea is to raise the level of the energy, the frequency of the energy. And you can feel the muscular things, but what we're trying to do with this is we are trying to feel the energies in our body. You know, we're trying to use that felt sense. So I'm going to go ahead and start the music and take a minute to relax here. And I'm just so you can get a feel for what it sounds like a little bit, I'm actually going to, you know, do kind of what I do, just so that you get an idea. And you know, like sometimes I don't sing out loud. Sometimes it's almost more like a drone, you know, and I'm kind of like humming it with my mouth closed. And the other thing I do is, in order to get the resonance, I go for a deeper note. So you're going to have to play with it to try to find where you can feel the resonance. So I'm going to share the computer sound. Well, hang on. Are we hearing this? No. Let me try this. Sorry, worked last time I tried it, but I'm going to try downloading it. I don't know why it's not playing it from Google Drive.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's almost there. Are you hearing the sound?
Yes.
No, I hear it.
Okay. So here's how I typically do it. We'll do about 10 or 12 minutes of this, and then we'll stop. And it's going to take a while to get the feel. So go ahead and kill your video and kill your sound.
was so beautiful, Gary. I've never done that before with my whole life. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Great. Any other comments? How about you, Tim?
Well, I had a really interesting experience. For years, when I was younger, I suffered from cluster headaches, which typically happen in men, and they're incredibly painful. And they disappeared when I turned about 50. And what I realized since then is every so often I see this kind of crescent of like geometric shapes that are like neon lights. They're kind of jiggling. Every so often, like every couple weeks or so, I'll see this thing in my vision, and sometimes I can't read or I can't really use my eyes. And as I was doing that, I noticed this little tiny circle of this stuff in the bottom of my vision. And doing the exercise, it started to grow, and I began to see it as an image of myself. And I've always kind of attached it to this disease. And now my experience is, okay, this is myself. This is the reality. And this is not my enemy. It's something that is trying to tell me this is what is. It's kind of a recognition of reality, really astonishing. And right now I'm having trouble, it's become big, but I think it's a wonderful coincidence, and thank you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Were you able to get the resonances in your throat and heart and drive it down? Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
yep.
Yeah, awesome. How about you, Jordy? You're still muted, Jordy.
Well, I am not alone at home, so I couldn't lower the alertness. To be locked in your own room with a standing guard outside to do those things properly.
Right.
So I was going to ask you, Gary, if you can give a link for the sound. I'll practice that on my own. Yeah. Otherwise, I was familiar from some time ago, and thank you for refreshing it.
Sure. I'll give Craig the link to send out.
Now,
go ahead.
To know the practicalities. Are you alone, all of you, or you are with family or with someone in the house? And if that interferes?
I'm alone personally, but yeah. How about you, Marina?
No, I'm not alone in the house, but my husband's used to me squirreling myself away, and he's not surprised if he was to come up. But I was a little bit conscious that he might come up with a drink and interrupt and disturb the process, because it was quite profound, and I really liked the sound, and I engaged as much as I could. I would say that my own experiences that are coming out of it, I feel like visually enhanced. So nice. I feel much more aware of the colours and things. So I think it would be an amazing exercise to do before doing some drawing. And during the breathing, obviously, when I brought it down, I had a very, very clear feeling, a very Mula Bandha feeling. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I wondered, because I thought, shoot, it doesn't have the preparation and it's shortened. So I just wasn't sure that, that it would work. I mean, for me, it's very profound too. How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I don't know if I did it correctly. Like, I just become more energized. Yeah, I have a friend, and he was in one of Dalai Lama's talk. And I asked him, like, okay, what did you take out from that experience? And he said that the thing that I came out from that experience was when thousands of people were humming together. I think the sound, actually, they were just humming, and you have thousands of them sitting there. I mean, that's, yeah, so you know, I my mind is totally different place right now. But yeah, definitely, I'm gonna try it again. Like once my mind is not everywhere right now. So
Right, right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I would have loved to heard the 1,000 people humming, you know. Angel or Don, anyone else want to give a comment?
That thumping when the heart started was
Right.
pretty, boy, that was, got me, that percussion was very, I mean, I could feel it. I resonate very deep.
Yeah, I thought that was, you know, especially good for something that, you know, where you're trying to reach like the heart chakra and things, you know, because it's like, yeah, we just, you know, the question is like how using our imaginations can we come away with a visualization and you know, feeling. So,
and actually for me, my heartbeat was affecting the tone. And I was just thinking, is this real? Is the tone changing according to my heartbeat? And I don't know, but it sure felt like it to me.
Yeah, I felt it, them beating about the same. That was what was kind of, they felt like they were in sync. You know?
That reminds me of this, you know, this thing where they put all these metronomes on you know, one of those trampolines and just going randomly. But after about 20 minutes, they all just synchronize. You know, you have these 100 metronomes synchronized. Well, it looks like we're out of time. You have anything more, Craig?
I'm going to send out, Tim, I will send out all the information from Teresa, and I will get in touch with her on what I need to do to be a participant. And then next time, I believe we'll finish the Kundalini yoga seminars, and then we'll just get back into visions, which I think is going to be very rich for everybody, because it's, I just always like to discuss unconscious material because it's not very theoretical. You know, we have an image and then we'll talk about it. So anyway, well, thank you for everybody for coming, and Marina, Kevin, Tim, and Jordy, and Gary, and Dawn, and Angel, and Jan, and everybody. So we'll see you next time. Okay. Bye-bye, guys.